Welcome to the Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
We're glad you're here. We are coming to you again, and as always, from World Headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut. And before I introduce my guest, I just want to give you an update. At the beginning of the last program, I mentioned the fact that the city of Middletown, where I live, was having its annual human cannonball launching contest across Lake Bezic in Middlefield. So I have a news update to just share with you here. Human cannonball Albert Murfwiffle won the award for the longest launch in the recent human cannonball launch competition at Lake Bezic in Middlefield, Connecticut. His win was tainted slightly by the fact that he flew across the width of the lake and through the living room window of Mrs. Mildred Klotz, age 93, of 26 Lakeshore Drive. When he came through the window, I thought he was Superman, said Mrs. Klotz, but he wasn't wearing a cape. Then he asked me to call 911. That's when I really knew he wasn't Superman, because Superman wouldn't have needed any help. Mrs. Klotz wasn't hurt. Mr. Murfwiffle is recovering from his injuries, and Mrs. Klotz's homeowner's insurance is paying to replace her window. All's well that ends well. So, yes, we are indeed glad you're here, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce my guest today, who is Joy Brooks. Joy, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for being here. We have spent a little bit of time together on a couple of different occasions, but I don't really know all that much about you. Could I ask you please to give us a little bit of history and how you came to be where you are?
Well, my mom and dad, no, you don't want to go that far.
I would.
So, I remember asking mom and dad one time over dinner when I was very young. I looked at mom, I looked at dad, and I said, "You mean you guys did it?" So I must have been taught something. And they both looked at me. I think my father gagged on his food. Who am I? So I am a native New Yorker. Grew up on Long Island, and I just discovered that Long Islanders don't say Long Island. People from New Jersey do.
Ah, that's critical.
Yeah, that's critical. I went to school. I wanted to become an archaeologist. My mother said over her dead body. So when I came out of school, dad said, get a job in the city and get married, the job was easy. The getting married was a little difficult. Finally got married at 40, moved to Washington State, came back from Washington State in 5 years, just in time for 9/11. Had a little bit of a nervous breakdown. Meanwhile, I was segueing. My career was getting more and more and more digital naturally. It just kept on falling in that direction. And I ended up becoming an email marketer, which I loved. I went back to school, got a second degree, not archaeology, a second degree in programming, and I started becoming an email marketing HTML developer, which really rang true for me. And did that since like 2000. And here I am, 24 years later, somewhat retiring. So that's sort of, the 50,000 foot view of who the heck is Joy Brooks.
Okay, we're going to come back to the whole, I think I want to say concept or idea of retirement, because I have the distinct sense that neither one of us believes in that at all. But connect for me if you could. And I'm asking because I'm at least allegedly, a marketing guy. When you were talking about email marketing, I didn't expect you to mention HTML. What, and I should know the connection probably, but I don't. What is the connection there?
So, in the beginning, when right after you could paste a template into Outlook and blast it off to all of your, everybody you know. Around 2003, they came up with can spam, which is there are certain things you can and cannot do. And coming at it, and that is legislation. That was legislation, Can Spam Act of 2003.
Yep.
What came out of that was actually an industry that began to bloom. And what happened was, instead of just one big image in an email background that you couldn't do anything with, it became a whole marketing game where you could click on it. You get newsletters, you get call to actions, you get a whole bunch of things. And what all those things were built on was HTML, which is markup language,
Mm-hmm.
hypertext markup
Hypertext.
language. So yeah. So the emails are built with that, and they needed to conform to a structure before all of these easy editors came along where you could just drag and drop stuff into a box and, oh, whoopee, I could send it. HTML still rules. It's just they've created WYSIWYGs on top of it, right?
Okay.
All these interfaces. I still do HTML development because I feel that if I'm going to help somebody do email marketing, I'm able to control the content more so because I can create really clean code, while these drag and drop editors muck it up a bit.
So, the what you referred to as the Can Spam Act, is that the ICANN regulations, ICANN?
No, Can Spam, CANSPAM. So that there were a number of things that came out of that, and I don't really know the entire story, all the legislation. All I do know is that when you're sending an email, you have to follow certain laws. And the biggest laws would be you need to have a real address at the bottom so that snail mail people can unsubscribe.
Yep.
You need to have an unsubscribe in your email, and it shouldn't be camouflaged out of the email. You need to have a subject line that pertains to the email. And a few other, I mean, there's a number of items, 8, 9, 10, I can't remember exactly, items that are required. So, I mean, that sort of set up the concept of spam itself. In other words, how did I get on this list? Why are you sending me this? Right. And there are certain organizations, for example, if you are a church or a school, you do not need to send it. You are not required by law to have an unsubscribe.
Oh, interesting.
What you're sending is to your constituents, and they require that information. Also, some transactional materials, you sign up for a subscription or you have a warranty or something of that nature, and the brand that you're engaging with is sending you information. They don't need to have an unsubscribe in that email because, again, they're sending you information that you require, like your subscription is up, or rules and regulations have changed, things of that, things like that. So I mean, there's quite a lot of legality behind the scenes. There's newer laws have come out. There's privacy laws. Essentially, California is big on that. So you have to have a privacy statement at your website or a landing page that identifies how you're collecting your data, what you're doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, in the United States, these are really boring trivialities, but if you're into email, you need to know these things. So in the United States, the law is opt out. So I can send you crap. I need to give you unsubscribe so you can opt out. You can't do anything about that, but I cannot send that to Europe or Canada or South America or Australia. The rules there are opt in. So I can only
Yep.
send those people who have opted in, and I need to show that they have opted in. Legal wise, I could get sued.
Yeah,
Millions.
that part actually mystifies me a little bit, because if, let's just say, you're a company, and if somebody has no idea of you as an entity, how in the world can they opt in? And I know you're right, because I have clients who are based in Europe, and you're exactly right about that. But I have another related question.
Yes.
Is it the canned spam thing that gave rise to third party email distributors like Constant Contact and MailChimp and those kinds of things?
They were beginning, I think, concurrently. So, the industry was developing on a number of different dimensions. So I think Constant Contact may have already been there. MailChimp had another service at that point, perhaps. I can't remember the name of it, but there were transactional services out there. SendGrid had some transactional services, so that companies wanting to go digital, and there were many that wanted to go digital, were able to correspond with their clients on on some sort of a level.
I remember, just to give an indication of how important this actually is. Um, Years ago, I had a client who decided that he was going to send out what we referred to as at the time as a mass email, and he was going to do it from the domain of the company that he worked for. And I discovered, and he discovered, that was a bad idea when I was unable to even send email to him at his domain email address because the domain had been blacklisted.
Right.
And so I just want folks to understand that still is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, there's quite a lot of overhead when you send an email and you're expecting your domain to handle it. Whoever's hosting that domain, wherever that email server is that you're using, needs to handle it. So let's say you're using you have an internet provider. Essentially, you're using your internet provider to send that email,
True.
and they'll figure it out, because their traffic all of a sudden goes, wow, and that's not good for them. And needless to say, they're going to get lots of reactions on the other end, where people are going to start calling and saying, who is this person? They're sending email, right? And they're going to connect. Matter of fact, that was one of the reasons why I went back to school, because I worked for a company, and my boss said to me at the time, my cousin, nephew, uncle, whatever it was, told me, and one of these things is that, whenever your boss says that, you're like, okay, what's gonna happen here?
Yeah.
Told me that you could send email, and here's some software. It's called spider software. You could spider the internet and get email addresses. So why don't you go back to your desk and get cooking? And I said, that's not really a good practice, and you're possibly going to get into hot water with your internet provider. Oh, no, no, no. He said it was totally okay. My cousin, uncle, nephew, whatever.
I love that.
So off I went, and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, well, how do I get myself into these things? And I did it. And the moral of the story was the internet provider called and said, cease and desist.
You know what? You know this. I know you do. Your boss was lucky the provider called
Yeah, I know that.
instead of just shutting it down.
Exactly. Exactly.
I want to connect this to the fact that you call your podcast, and I'm beginning to understand why, I think, Email and Coffee.
Mm.
How did you come up with that name? And what I'm going to ask this next question because I've been on it. And our conversation had nothing to do with email or coffee. So, how did you come up with that, and how has the podcast evolved?
It's exactly, the word evolve is definitely the word. So, this all happened. My first domain that I ever bought was called the Flying Dragon,
Hmm.
because my life has been a number of fall down, fire up, ashes, all fall down, get up again, and do and keep moving
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And so Flying Dragon, because I looked at myself, as the phoenix, as the dragon, where, it's really a matter of taking what you have and bringing it forward and keep going. Then, at that point, I was a consultant and a freelancer because, alluding back to that conversation I had with the boss who said my uncle, cousin, whatever, I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. Every time I work for somebody, they ask me to do these things that are just morally wrong and look at me like I'm wrong when I say no, no. So I thought, I'm going to go out on my own. So I started consulting, and I started using the Flying Dragon as my domain, and I built a website, and I moved forward with that. And it occurred that at the same time when I bought that domain, that I was getting more and more and more involved in email and email marketing. Now, 10, 15 years later, that same, oh, I'm firing up again, something's going on, I'm burning up. What happened was I was working for a number of different agencies, and that even though I was consulting and I was freelance, it was happening over and over again, where I don't know if do I have a sign on my forehead that says kick me, but while everyone else was moving forward, I was being somewhat used and abused. And I don't want to say that victim. It's really possible that I just don't stand up for myself. And let's put it this way, that I'm overly flexible, and you really need to back me into a corner before I get pissed off. And when I'm backed into a corner, that's when I fire up and burn. So I was at that point, and I said, I got to do something for myself. And myself said, yeah, and what would that be? So I'm having these conversations with myself, out loud to myself, in all shapes and variations. And I loved, I would often say to myself at 4 a.m, you can't pay me enough for this. And I would be drinking coffee and doing email. And something came over me, and I said, emailandcoffee.com. Oh God, I got to buy it. And I went off and bought it. And then I thought, and now what? Okay. So I created a website, email marketing. And then I'm like, why did I just say and? Things are going off in my head. And it was but right before COVID. It had nothing to do with COVID. It just happened at the same time that I began to say, I need to have something totally mine. It needs to be creative. I don't want to write marketing content. I've been doing that. It's really not filling the void. There still is a void, and I feel I need to fill it. And I started talking to myself on Zooms and putting them on YouTube using email and coffee. And then I thought, oh, let's do this with other people because I'm appearing a little bit insane. The rant was good, but I thought, let's do it with other people. And then I started to do email conversations with marketing people, digital conversations with email on the side. I was always drinking coffee. So the brand started like that. And somewhere within the first year, I said, okay, this is old. If I have another email marketing conversation, I'm going to just shoot myself on air. And I said, so what should I do with the email marketing? I'm like, email on coffee. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm email. And I really do love the industry. And I think like that to some extent. It's somewhere along the lines of ethical marketing.
Ooh.
Things you could do legally, do the right thing. When you get into that inbox for your customer, what are you going to say? Right?
Yeah.
So I think like that. And I thought, well, you know what? Just pivot, tweak it a little bit, and continue the conversations. Talk to people you want to talk to. Have those conversations. They don't need to be the hard conversations. We don't necessarily need to do brain surgery, but we can talk about it. So I just kept doing that, and it's still pivoting because I look at it somewhere between a show about everything, entertainment. It's not about me, it's about you thing. And that's still email and coffee because I'm still email. And my guest would be that warm and fuzzy coffee.
Yeah.
That's the long
You just,
story.
when you said entertainment, you reminded me, as a late blooming college student, I once took a cultural anthropology course, and it was a 3-hour course. It met once a week at night. And the teacher made such an impression on me that I never forgot his name. It was Renwick C. Griswold. And he had kind of long hair.
Do you know Mrs. Klotz?
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. He wore like an Irish tweed bucket cap. He always wore really thick Irish tweed sweaters. And around his neck, he had this leather thong with a whale's tooth on it. And so one night during the break, I said to him, Professor Griswold, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but you were born to teach cultural anthropology. And he said to me, you know what? Thank you. Someone told me once a long time ago that effective education is at least 40% entertainment. He was so right.
That's sort of, I never came to myself in those words, but that's the feeling. That's the feeling. It's sort of like everyone has something to share.
Amen.
And allowing them to speak about it in their own words is sort of the mission. And the other mission, a big mission for me, being that New Yorker, was to shut up and listen.
Yeah. I will admit that I struggle with that a little bit my own self. All right. I am going to take this moment for our first commercial break. There's a number of things I want to get into when we come back. So please stick around. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
That my fault. I'm sorry. Welcome back, everyone. My microphone was off.
Okay.
I have the same problem with my car. If I don't have my keys, I can't get the thing started. It's just the weirdest thing. Anyway, you said in the first segment that you had in your working life created marketing content, and you didn't want to do that anymore. One of the things that connected for me was that the work you do with email is distributing that marketing content. And then I made the note to myself about doing it effectively, and you said ethically.
Mm.
And I took some liberty when I wrote the description of this show to say that we were going to talk about coffee, connections, context, and credibility.
Mm.
So I actually see all of those things connected in the effective and ethical distribution of marketing content. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. It has certainly been one of the reasons why I went into consulting, because there's a point where you're asking me to do something and I don't mind, I'm being paid for it. But when it comes to something about that doesn't sound right, and then saying, just do it. And I've had a few bosses do that to me. Just do it.
Yeah.
Get out and just do it. And that's happened to me in many ways, shapes, and forms. That's why I realized I was a consultant, because I wanted to be able to walk away when it wasn't right, when it didn't feel right, and not have to continuously do things that adjusted to a bottom line that wasn't my bottom line. I just had, nothing to do with it. It didn't feel right to me. And it's not that I'm the most, that I'm, so ethical and that I have these incredible missions. It's just that there are some things in life that are wrong. And if I feel strongly enough, I'm not doing them. It's just not the way you do things. You don't push grandma to the ground. This morning, I'm walking my dogs, and there's a big bag of garbage in the road, sitting in the road. Cars are passing it. And I'm thinking to myself, what is wrong with these people? Pull over. You got a car. pull over, put it in your trunk and get rid of it. It's not yours, I know, but it's in the road. Everybody passed, and I just couldn't handle it. I had 3 dog leashes. I went out into the middle of the road, I picked up the garbage, and I carried it over to a garbage can. Because that's the right thing to do.
This
Simple.
is going to be a tangent, to be sure, but that's okay. I have a dear friend who's been on the program. His name is Jonathan Goldson. And Jonathan contends, among other things, that we live in a, quote, post-truth age. And there are times when I feel like perhaps you and I are among a dwindling number of people on the planet who believe that there really is objective right and objective wrong. So what I wrote while you were saying that was principles and integrity. And I do understand that sometimes we can take a stand on principle and maybe not be entirely correct about that. But what I really struggle with is the relationship between whatever principles we might hold and our own personal integrity. That's just a tough balancing act for me.
I think that's life. I think that is life.
Yeah.
You know that, I mean, I think that when it comes down to it, we're all searching, like we're all looking for who we are. You just define who we are. We have principles and integrity, and that's who we are. And once we get to a point where we know what those principles are and our own integrity, that's called happiness.
Wow.
And it's that simple. You may or may not find it if you're a nomad traveling the world. You may or may not find it. You may find it in your backyard underneath a rock.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to stop the show early, and I'm going out in my backyard. We have lots of rocks
That
out
might
there.
be under your neighbor's rock. Just saying.
Well, if I go in his yard, I'll probably get arrested. So I'm going to connect it to one other thing. You have a group that you call Women in Email Marketing Mastermind. First of all, I would like you to describe to us what that's about. And I'm going to surmise that it has something to do with the principles and integrity and ethical communication and context and connections that we began this segment with. Would I be close?
Yeah, I think so. So it was the brainchild of another woman. She reached out about 4 years ago and said, I have an idea, reached out LinkedIn. I have an idea. I'd like to know if any women would like to do some brainstorming together. Just, if you have challenges, whatever it is, once every 2 weeks online, let's do it. So there were 4 of us that said, that's a good idea, let's do it. Because at that point I was walking through email and coffee. I was trying to figure out what it was. And I just needed a bouncing board. Or maybe some sanity. I don't know. So I joined the group and I thought to myself, this is such a wonderful thing because first, we're all women, which is good, so that we're comfortable here. 2, we're all email marketing, so we're all talking the same language, which is good. And some of us are talking about email specific things, but some of us are talking about the periphery, right? And this is good. So at the end of the session, we had like maybe 8 or 9 meetings. The woman said, I'm good with this. I'm moving on. And I said, do you mind if I take this on? And some other woman said, I'll help you with it. And we continued with it. And that was 7 cohorts ago. So I'm on the 8th cohort. And what I foresaw was a way for women who are sometimes in a silo, whether they're working full-time, part-time, remote, on-site, whatever it was. Sometimes email marketing people feel that they're in a silo. Or at least I did. In the email marketing silo, you may not necessarily be talking to the people in social, you may not necessarily be talking to sales, or you may be getting directives from sales and you're not necessarily seeing the bottom line. There may be any number of things going on. And so I thought to myself, what a better way to have women talk about their experiences together. And one of the most important things was I needed that grassroots and I needed that common denominator, because the chemistry could easily go astray if you added too much to it. So let's say it was women and men. It could easily go astray because many of the conversations were women-focused conversations where we were talking about, I can't seem to negotiate. And
Wow.
the women talked about it. And I thought, if we had a guy in there, he would be like, I don't even understand what you guys are talking about. Because in many cases, for whatever reason, I really don't know, men negotiate and women do not. And at least when I look for a job, let's put it this way. Many women do scrap up and negotiate. I have a girlfriend that does a damn good job. And when I buy my next car, she'll certainly be with me. But I'm not the type of person that negotiates. So if you tell me to do something, I generally go off and do it. I don't ask how much, maybe I'll ask, what's the deadline? But that's it. So having those types of conversations, women-focused conversation, I felt was very important because everyone were, to some extent, we were all coming at least from the same bottom up.
For whatever this is worth, I'm going to suggest that I agree with you, and I think you're on the right track. And I would also suggest any conversation that doesn't include testosterone is probably going to be a lot more positive.
I had been called by someone to be not hard-headed. Yeah, let's call it hard-headed. Oh, Joy's really hard-headed. And it was by a man, and he went to my boss, another man, and said that. And I thought to myself, me? I'm like, I'm stubborn, and I know what's right and what's wrong, and I might suggest something more than once, or at least remind you, but I don't necessarily consider it to be hard-headed. However, I'm looking at it through my own perspective. And I thought to myself, would a guy say that another guy is hard-headed?
Probably not.
And I thought, see here, and that's one of the reasons why I started the group, because I thought to myself, first of all, it's time for women to stop saying that men need to stop mansplaining. In many cases, the reason the man is doing that effectively is because they think you don't understand and they're explaining. And they would probably do the same to a child, but they do think other men understand. So essentially, they're treating you like you're an outsider.
Yeah, and as a general comment, and we're not going to go into politics here, but I suspect one of the reasons that we're in the mess we're in is that men assume other men understand what they're saying, and they don't. I'm sorry, the next break has already creeped up on us, but when we come back, I want to pick up relative to the mastermind group.
Yeah.
I want to pick up on evolution, because we've already talked about that a little bit, and discovery, and see where that takes us. So again, another commercial. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore, learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality,
Where potentiality meets reality.
where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on Dreamvision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Your mic, Mark.
You think after forgetting to turn my mic back on the first time, I might be better the second? You would think that. You'd be wrong.
Habits die hard.
Sorry about that. Yes, they do. Okay, so we were talking about your women in email marketing mastermind. You and I had talked even before we started recording, and then during this recording, about evolution. And I wonder if for women who may become part of that mastermind group, regardless of what their objectives are, if they might engage in processes of evolution and discovery, and if they might find in that process an audience, a market or an audience that they might not even have anticipated, and so find that mastermind of even more value than they might have anticipated when they joined.
Yeah, well, that really is my mission, but in many cases, the mastermind marketplace is getting flooded with master classes
Yeah.
and passive income tools these days, where everybody's like, oh, you know what? I can make a few bucks, so I'll have a master class and I'll teach, I'll teach somebody, here's a syllabus, I'll do it once, I'll record it, and everybody wants to make a fast buck. So there's a lot of these out there. Mine was never meant to be a master class. It was always meant to be a mastermind. It was always meant to be a function of the people within it. It cannot be anything without the members. It doesn't exist outside of the members. And every single one would be different by virtue of the membership. So that's what it was meant to be. But I think I'm getting, I don't like to use the word competition, but there's a lot of tools out there, and in the 4 years that I have offered the mastermind, I'm noticing now that there's so much out there. A lot of networking groups. Again, all of these groups are built on the same, they're built toward this passive income, where I'll put in the least amount of effort and I'll make a buck. And that's not what my group is meant to be. So the last round I had, where everyone convinced me that I had to charge some amount of money, because if there's no skin, they're not in the game. And so I charged money, and I realized I don't want to do this, because everyone wanted to know what they were going to get out for their buck. And I thought, that's not what this is about. You're not coming here to get something. You're coming here to give something. And if you're not aware of that, and if you're not willing to give, you don't belong. And so it is an evolution. The mastermind is an evolution, because it needs to change. So I'm sort of going backwards, and I'm actually rethinking the mastermind at this point. I had been advertising it, and I hoped to start it in August, and I was getting deafening silence when I put out registration. And I thought, well, this is, I always, am I odd in this? I always look for the signs. I'm like, okay, this means something. What does it mean? It means I'm not talking to the right people. It means it's not the right time. It means a whole bunch of things. So just don't throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, I give up. Although, I give up. I thought to myself, just put it on the back burner and see where it goes.
I would like to suggest to you, with all due humility, it may actually be a matter of positioning and differentiation, especially given what you were saying about the fact that there are so many people doing these things. I want to make one comment. It was shared with me that a person on YouTube says, don't generalize about men and women. Both genders can be negotiators depending on individual personality. I absolutely do recognize that. But
absolutely.
If I get a chance to take a shot at myself in testosterone, I like to do it.
Yeah, I don't like to make generalities myself, but I would say that women that a rare, as I said, my girlfriend will kill you when she negotiates. She's a Sicilian. Here we go. Let's do another generality. She's that Italian Sicilian that could literally, in the marketplace, get you to give your food to her at no charge and feed her for a week. She could do that. And me, I would be sitting there going, how much is that egg? So, I don't like to generalize, but the main thing I would like to say is that if you can do common denominators, then obviously if you're going to get a whole bunch of people together who are in the debate club, you're at a certain level.
Yep.
So if you get a whole bunch of women together, there's going to be one or two women in that group that are going to be able to talk to the other women and explain how they negotiate, which would be far more effective than if you were in a room with men and women and the men started talking about how they negotiate. It may go over a lot of women's heads.
Yeah. I'm not sure it would go over their heads, but I just, it might be different wavelengths or something.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't mean like I'm too stupid to understand what you're saying. It's just that I can't do it that way because I don't have testosterone.
Yeah. And by the same token, I readily concede that my wife goes about things in ways that are completely different from mine, and in probably more instances than not, more effective. I was writing something about her, and I cited a line from a Dan Fogelberg song called "Comes and Goes," and it says, "The woman is like the tide; she comes and goes. She knows the things that I can just suppose."
Yeah, I would say a lot of it is societal, but um, I think there's a reason. I think there's a reason for the binary.
Yeah.
I think there's and it doesn't need to be this political statement. It's just science created a binary for a reason.
And I think legitimate differences are to be acknowledged and celebrated.
Yeah, and they work well together.
Yeah.
It's called yin yang or yin yang. It's okay. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's so stiff and it's so societal and it doesn't mean that. It just means yin yang.
In celebration of our differences, Grandpa O'Brien loved to say, "That's what makes horse racing."
Yeah, exactly.
I want to touch on one more thing before we have to go. This has probably been among the fastest hours of my life. We talked before we started recording about the fact that you may or may not be contemplating retirement. And then you were quick to say that you actually can't imagine retiring. And you used the word change. And I love that. And I have to tell you, I know there's legitimacy to this, but I resist the idea of ageism, because it means to me that if we've aged out of something, maybe there's another something.
Right, we age into something else.
Yeah, that we can and should find. So is there anything more that you would like to share about that?
Yeah, I think that one of the worst things that we could possibly do for ourselves is to retire and do nothing, unless that nothing is a passion and you just love to play tennis. All right, play tennis. But that really means that you're not doing nothing.
Correct.
You're playing tennis. Okay. So, if you're golfing, tennising, traveling, okay, that's a passion. That's what you want to do. But you must do something. And so what is occurring to me is like, you know what? Maybe I need to gracefully exit out of email marketing and let all the young people come in and let the marketplace and the industry grow. It's evolving. Let it go. You don't necessarily need to know everything and be involved in everything. Maybe it's time for me to let it go and find something else. And then my eyes open wide and go, yeah, what is that something else? And there again, that's where I go to ashes, come to the ground and get reborn. The flying dragon, Phoenix once again. And so I am at that point where I can sort of, like musical chairs, music stops, everybody's got a chair, and you're one person out, you don't have a chair. You don't go crying into the corner. You're like, okay, see ya.
Yeah,
And you go somewhere else. And that's okay, because that music has stopped. It's okay. What are you going to do? And everybody should be thinking about that. What do they want to do? I mean, I cook, I like to walk, I like to do a few other things that can be considered leisure. And now I don't have to squeeze it into a busy schedule. Whereas before I was like, oh, 9 to 5, have to be online, 9 to 5. I have to be available for my clients if they need me, 9 to 5. Now I can say, oh, gee, it's 10:30. Let's go for a walk, guys. And I'll take the guys for a walk. And I don't say, oh, I have to be back in a half an hour. I'm like, well, I'll get home when we get home.
Yeah.
But I do think to myself, I need to have something that I can sink my teeth into, not because I need an identity, but because my personality is screaming to get involved in something and to be part of something. And I need to know what that is. If I need to build it, I will. If I need to find it and join it, I will. I just need to do that. That's who I am. And that's been what I've done forever. It's at one point it was called career. Now it's called retirement.
Well, all right. I actually don't think that the heyday of email marketing is over. So for the people who have joined us today and who will see these or listen to these recordings later, please let folks know how they can find your email marketing services, how they can find the masterclass, and how they can find your podcast, Email and Coffee.
So fortunately for me, I have a website called emailandcoffee.com, and that's all spelled out, emailandcoffee.com, at which point you can go to it. I don't necessarily talk about email so much, but you can go to it. You can find my podcast. You can get a little bit more information about the women's group, and you can email Joy, J-O-I, at emailandcoffee.com to talk about email or podcast or women's groups.
Okay, and I'm going to encourage folks to do that because, again, I do not believe that the value of email marketing is spent. So I would love it if people would follow up with you. Joy, I thank you for being here. This was so much fun. I love your heart and your energy. Thank you very much for being here. And for all of you who've joined us today, thank you. I will be back, I think the 7th of October. I'm not sure, but I will check and I will send out notices ahead of time. So thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Joy. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.